Rabbi say, Vayihi Bayoim Hashmini, it was on the eighth day of what? Rashi says, Shmini lemiluim. In other words, it was the eighth day that followed the 7 days of Miluim, during which the inauguration of Aaron Ubanov took place. Hu Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Shehukam HaMishkan Boy Bayoim. So the Mishkan was put up on the eighth day. How does Rashi know that Bayoim Hashmini is the 7th day of the Milu, is the day after the 7 days of Miluim? Obviously, those who remember that we once read Parshas Tzav, which is the Parsha that comes before Shemini, and the end of Parshas Tzav, steht doch dort nu Pesach Oyhel Moyed Laila Teishvu Laila v'Yom Shivas Yomim, and that was the 7 days of Miluim. So the Bayom Hashmini is the day after. The day after. Rashi says, brings from the Seder Olam that Oisoi Hayoim Notal Eser Atorois, that this day, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the day of Hakamas HaMishkan, was crowned, took 10 crowns. The first of those crowns is, as the Gemara brings in Masechta Shabbos, Daf Pei Zayin Amid Beis, the Gemara lists the 10 crowns. After the Gemara made a cheshbon that year, the year of Hakamas HaMishkan, the second year of Letzeis B'nai Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim, the Gemara says that Rosh Chodesh Nisan fell out on a Sunday, like the Kvius of this year. It was also an Erev Pesach Shechaliyas B'Shabbos. It comes out that the first Pesach Doros that Klal Yisrael actually made was on an Erev Pesach Shechaliyas B'Shabbos, according to this Gemara. So the Gemara brings the Braisa of Seder Olam that Be'eser Atorois, it was Nesater Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first of which is that it was Rishon L'Maaseh Bereishis. The first crown of this Rosh Chodesh Nisan is that it was the Rishon L'Maaseh Bereishis. So according to this, Yom HaShmini has another meaning. Yom HaShmini has the meaning of being the day after, the 8th day after the 7 days of creation. We have the Sheishes Yemei Bereishis and Shabbos, which is part of the Shivas Yemei HaHekif, and then there's the Sunday after, the day after. That's the Shmini. That's the Yom HaShmini. But it's interesting, we never find that Sunday should have a special Maila and Chashivas and significance. And over here, in the context of Hakamas HaMishkan, we seem to be saying that Sunday, being the Rishon L'Maaseh Bereishis, has some meaning and significance. It's a crown that this Rosh Chodesh Nisan had. So Avada, it connects with the Gemara in Megillah that says that Oisoi Hayoim, the day of Hakamas HaMishkan, Hoiso Simcha Lefonov, Kiyoim Shenivru Boi Shomayim V'Oretz. And weißt doch ois that Hakamas HaMishkan somehow resembles creation. So being that this is the Yom Rishon of Maaseh Bereishis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, it's the appropriate time to be the Yom of Hakamas HaMishkan, which is our Maaseh Bereishis, so to speak, as the Gemara says, and as we already spoke, that the Olam Gadol that Hashem created for us, the macrocosm that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created for us, which, as the Mekubalim say, he Kaviyachol contracted his presence, he was Metzamtzim himself in order to create space for us. That's in order that we create space for him by contracting ourselves. And that's the idea of the Mishkan, which is the Olam Kotan, the microcosm that we create in the Olam Gadol. And therefore the Mishkan is erected by Yom HaShmini, the day after the Shivas Yemei Bereshis. After HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a space for us, we create a space for him. And Parshas Shemini, is quite often read in the beginning of the Yemei HaSfira. Sfiras Omer also begins Mimochros HaShabbos. The Tzaddikim learned at Kipshutoi that Mimochros HaShabbos means Sunday, and that we begin to count Sfira the day after the Shabbos, after Tesvav Nisan. But Chazal say, bring many rayas, and the Gemara in Menachos, that Mimochros HaShabbos doesn't mean Sunday, but it means the day after the first day of Pesach, the day after Tesvav Nisan. It means Tezayin Nisan. But obviously the question is why, in this context, the Torah refers to the Yom Tov of Pesach, not as a Yom Tov, but as Shabbos, Mimochros HaShabbos. In the Tefillah that we say, or that's printed in the Siddur to say, after Sfiras Omer, we say Yehirotzen Shebeschus Sfiras Omer Shesofarti Hayoim. So Yisukan Mashe Pogamti Besfira X or Besfira Y or Besfira Z. But the order that we do is actually not XYZ, but it's ZYX. In other words, we start with Chesed, and we go to Gvura, and we go to Teferes. We start with Chesed Shebechesed, and we go all the way down to it is actually XYZ. Sorry for that. We go from the top to the bottom. Now, l'chora, when one is in the Seder Avodah that a Yid is Oved HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he has to first correct what he erred on the lower level, and he can then move on to the higher level, and from there move on to an even higher level. So we would expect that the Seder should be that the first night we should talk about Malchus Sheba Malchus, and then we should talk about Yesod Sheba Malchus, and we should move our way upwards all the way till the last night when we'll talk about being Mesakin Chesed Sheba Chesed, which is the highest Madrega of the Spheres. So it's kind of surprising that we begin with Chesed Sheba Chesed, we begin all the way on top, and we move downwards. The Chassam Sofer in a tshuva in Yeridei Siman Reish Lamed Gimel asks this. The Balamor in the end of Masechtas Pesachim asks why we don't make a Shehechiyonu on Sfiras Omer. And the Balamor says that that's because Sfiras Omer B'zman Hazeh is a takana of Zeicher LaMikdash, because Balamor is taking the position that Sfiras Omer Doiraisa is only when there's a Korban HaOmer, and therefore B'zman Hazeh it's Zeicher LaMikdash. Says the Balamor that since it's Zeicher LaMikdash, so it's Kuloi Ledavoin Leiv Churban Beis Mikdashenu. It evokes a feeling of sadness. I mean, that we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. We're remembering the Beis HaMikdash that we no longer have. And therefore, it's inappropriate to make a Shechiyonu on this mitzvah. So says the Balamor. But in the Shibbolei Aleket, and also in the Meiri, in Pesachim Daf Zayin, they say that the lashon of the Shibbolei Aleket is Kvar Niftar Beberchas Hazman Shel Hayom Tov Atzmoi, that the bracha of Shechiyonu v'Kiyimonu v'Giyonu Lazman Hazeh that we make on the first night of Pesach, for the Zman of Pesach, that patters the Sfiras Omer. Kvar Niftar, it includes the entire Zman of Sfiras Omer. Now, this is very difficult to understand, obviously, because the mitzvah of Sfiras Omer is not one of the mitzvahs of Pesach, like Pesach Matzah and Moreh. The mitzvah of Sfiras Omer is an independent mitzvah. It's not from the mitzvahs of Pesach. Actually, we begin counting after the first day of Pesach. So how are we saying that the Birchas Hazman that we make on the Zman Hazeh, Shechiyonu v'kimonu v'giyonu lazman Hazeh of Pesach, Paters Sfiras HaOmer? Truth be told, that we find a pasuk in Yecheskel, Kapitel Mem Hey, pasuk Chof Aleph, where the pasuk says, Barishon, Ba'arba Osor Yoim Lachodesh, Yio Lochem HaPosach, Chag Shavuos, Yomim, Matzois Ye'ochel. So Rashi says, Chag Shavuos Yomim, Al Shem Shemaschilin Mimenu Lispar Shiva Shabbos. So the Navi refers to Pesach as Chag Shavuos Yomim. And that's because from Pesach, we begin to count the 7 weeks. So Pesach is somehow defined by the weeks that we count post-Pesach to Shavuos. What does that mean? So maybe we can say, based on what's Mekubal from the Balei Kabbalah, that on the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim was Niglo Aleihem Melech Malchei Hamlochim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ga'olam. The night of Yetzias Mitzrayim, when Hashem revealed himself, V'avarti Be'eretz Mitzrayim, Ani V'loi Malach. At that point, Klal Yisrael reached the ultimate highest madrega that they can reach. It's only that afterwards, HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed that Gilui Shchina in order to enable them and to allow them to reacquire the madrega that they reached with their own effort. And that's the idea of Sfiras HaOmer. Like it says in the Shir HaShirim, Moshcheni Acharecha Norutza Heviani HaMelech Chadorov. Heviani HaMelech Chadorov is Matan Torah. Moshcheni is Yetzias Mitzrayim, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulled us. The Acharecha Norutza is what we do during the Yemei HaSfira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed the Gilui Shchina in order that we should be able to acquire that madrega on our own. So the Fizeh, the Zman Hazeh of Sfiras HaOmer is really the Zman Hazeh of the first night of Pesach, because all we're doing with Sfiras HaOmer is reconnecting with the madrega that we already reached on the first night of Pesach. Therefore, the bracha of Shechiyonu v'kiyimonu v'giyonu lazman hazeh that we make on the first night of Pesach is a bracha that covers the entire Zman Hazeh of Sfiras HaOmer, because the Zman Hazeh of Sfiras HaOmer is included in the first night of Pesach. Now, the difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov, we know, is that Shabbos is Kviyah v'Kaima, Shabbos is a matone, milamayla. It doesn't involve human effort. As the Gemara says, matona achas yeshli bebeis gnozai v'Shabbos shmo, as opposed to Yom Tov, which is the Yisrael the katshinu lezmanim. Yidden are mekadesh lezman because you need kiddush bezdin in order for Yom Tov to take place. So, in the context of Usvartem Lochem, of Sfiras HaOmer, which is all about our reconnecting with the madrega that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us with an Esarusa de la Eila, that we should now, with an Esarusa de la Sata, with an awakening from beneath, we should reconnect with that madrega. Over here, the Yom Tov of Pesach is referred to as Shabbos, because the relationship between Pesach and the Yemei HaSfira is like the relationship between Shabbos and the days after. Shabbos is the matana, and afterwards the matana is mistalik, but then we have to work on our own. And lefizeh, we could say that also explains the Seder of the Spheres, because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu removed from us the Gilui Shchina, removed from us the madrega that we reached at the moment of Yetzias Mitzrayim, So the question is, did he remove it all at once? And we had to start again from rock bottom? Or the pshat is that he removed the madregas from on top. He removed the top madrega in order that we should move our way forward and conquer that on our own. Then he removed the next madrega beneath that, so that we should be able to conquer that on our own. And then he removed the one beneath that in order we should be able to conquer that on our own. So Memela, the Seder is Taka Chesed Shebechesed, and then Gvura Shebechesed, and then Teferes Shebechesed, because this is the Seder Avoid of the Yemei Asfira, because we don't lose the Madrega of Pesach at once. We lose it step by step, and we climb back up step by step. You know, it says, so our Avoida, you know, it's interesting that this in the Hebrew language, we have Sfira is Lispor. And there's a concept of Lesaper, which is to tell the story. In Yiddish, you say Tzelen means to count, and Der Tzelen is to tell a story. In English, you say to count, and you say to recount. So the Emma says that over here, you see that on Pesach, we recount. And only after we recount, we count. Only after we do the Lamanta Saper Ba'oznei Bincha, we start the Usfartem Lochen. Only after we do the Der Tzelen do we start Tzelen. So the pshat is because we really got it all on the first night of Pesach. That's why the recount comes before the counting. And afterwards, it's taken away from us in order that we should be able to reconnect to that madrega with our own effort. You know, it could be that we could teach es in the sense of im, with, as es Yaakov, ish ubeisoi bo. Es Yaakov ish ubeisoi bo. Tavdun esoy loikim is the pshat that we serve with Kaviyochel the Rebbeinu Shalom. And what do I mean? Because the Gemara says, Minayin Shakodesh Baruch Hu Meiniach Tefillin. The Medrash says in Parshas Mishpatim on the pasuk Magid Dvorov LeYaakov Chukov uMishpatov LeYisrael Masha Kodesh Baruch Hu Oise uMitzav LeBonav. So the pshat is that we share together with the Rebbeinu Shalom this avodah. This Tavdun Eso Elokim Alahorazeh. The Rebbeinu Shalom gives us the opportunity to become partners in the Lesakein Oilom B'Malchus Shakai. And that's why he takes away from us the Gilui Shchina that would coerce us to do what we're doing. He wants us to become partners. And therefore, B'Yitziachas Amazemi Mitzrayim begins the process of Sfiras HaOmer, where we move on our own in an oifen of Acharechon Arutza, in order that it should be Tavdun Es Elokim Alahorazeh, that we should be partnering with him, we should be serving with him, and not being forced by him to do what we do. So the avodah of Mimochros HaShabbos is really the avodah of Bayoim HaShmini. Just like Bayoim HaShmini, we put up our Mishkan. After the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world for us, so also Mimochros HaShabbos, we do our count after the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us that Shabbos, that Pesach, that Gilui Shchina of Avarti Be'eretz Mitzrayim Balayla Hazeh. You know, we begin our weekly Yom HaShmini on Motzei Shabbos, and by Ma'ariv we say V'yehi Noyam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu Umasi Adeinu Koinenu Aleinu Umasi Adeinu Koinenehu. Why do we say that on Motzei Shabbos? So the Ravan and Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yokor say that because Moshe Rabbeinu said it when he completed the Mishkan. So what does that have to do with Motzei Shabbos? Vaistois that since the completion of the Mishkan was on the Yom HaShmini, the day after, therefore every week when we begin the day after, we say V'yehi Noyam, and that very much comes right according to what Rashi says on that pasuk in Tillim, Kapitel Tzadik. Rashi says, Koinenehu, Koinein Oisoi. We're asking Hashem to be Mechoinein, Maaseh Yodeinu. And Rashi says, Ushnei Pa'amim. It says, Umaaseh Yodeinu Koinena, and then we say Maaseh Yodeinu Koinena Aleinu. So we mention the Koinena twice. Says Rashi, why? Achas al Meleches HaMishkon, Shebirchon li Yisrael, ve'hispalel shetishra shchina b'maaseh yedeihem b'mishkon, va'achas shetehei bracha b'maaseh yedeihem. One is for the Meleches HaMishkan, and one is for our doings. Meaning, because be'emes, every week, when we once again engage in the Lamed Tes Malachis, with which the Mishkan was created, the idea is that we should make our Maisi Yodeinu into a dwelling place for the Rebbeinu Shalom. We should be making with B'chol Drochecha Do'ehu, with B'chol Ma'asecha L'Shem Shomayim, we should be giving the Rebbeinu Shalom a presence in our life. And therefore the V'yehi Noyam that Moshe Rabbeinu said on the day of Hakamas HaMishkan, which was the Yom HaShmini, which was Sunday, the Rishon L'Maaseh Bereishis, that's the pasuk with which we begin every week our Sunday. V'yehi Noyam Hashem Elokeinu, Aleinu Masi Odeinu Koinenu, Aleinu Masi Odeinu Koineneu. You know, the Gemara in Psachim Daf Nun Daled tells us that the reason that we make the Birkas Haner on Motzei Shabbos is because Ha'or Nivra b'Motzei Shabbos, because Or was created on Motzei Shabbos. What does it mean that Or was created? This is already not creation like during the 7 days of creation. This is the creation of the day after, as the Gemara says, that the Motzei Shabbos, Nosan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Deya Ba'adam HaRishon Me'ein Dugma Shel Maila. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave man Deya Me'ein Dugma Shel Maila Ve'hevi Shnei Avonim V'tochnon Zeh B'zeh V'yotzeh Me'ein Or. So Adam HaRishon took 2 stones and he rubbed one against the other, V'yotzeh Me'ein Or. So the challenge really is that in spite of the fact that we rub our hands together and we make things happen, we should recognize that really it's Boirei Ma'orei Ha'esh, that it's the Rebbeinu Shalom that's creating it. In other words, during the days of creation, it was obvious that the Rebbeinu Shalom is the creator. The challenge is that the day after, we continue to recognize that the Rebbeinu Shalom is involved in all our doings. And that's the idea of the Mishkan. That's the idea of Maaseh Yodeinu Koinenu Aleinu, Maaseh Yodeinu Koineneu, every week, that we should find the Rebbeinu Shalom and keep in touch with the Rebbeinu Shalom in our mundane daily activities. And that's really where the Ikar Avodas Hashem is. You know, there are times of inspiration, but you know, Yiddishkeit is much more about perspiration than inspiration. I mean, it's about the what we do after the inspiration. It's what we do on the Yom HaShmini. That's what makes the difference, not what happened during the Shivas Yemei Bereishis. Okay, Rabbi, I think I'm going to part with you at this time.